Hi there, I'm Astra, and welcome to this Blender Basics tutorial. Today we're going to be using Kayla Fox's new Raven model, but everything we cover applies to all of Kayla's models and honestly to any Blender project. We're going to cover 4 things: navigating Blender, posing the model, changing clothing and accessories, and finally rendering your final image. This is designed for beginners, so hopefully by the end of the video you'll have everything you need to make a pose and produce a finished render. So let's get started. First thing we need to do is open up the model in Blender. So let's go ahead and open up the folder where we've got our assets, and let's open up the .blend file. Now that we're in Blender, let's start with the simplest thing you can do, which is going to be to press F12. This is going to create an instant render of the scene. We're going to use the same shortcut throughout the tutorial to check our work. Great, that's our camera view of the scene. We'll come back to the render view a lot, so let's just stay comfortable with that shortcut and talk about the 3 main windows that we're seeing if we close out of this render. So first we have the big window in the middle. That's called our 3D viewport. This is your live preview of the scene and where you'll do most of your direct interaction with the model. In the top right, we have the outliner view. That is going to be the hierarchy of collections, think of them kind of like folders, and objects in the scene. Next to each item, you'll see a few icons, but the 2 that matter the most are going to be the eyeball icon, which is whether we're going to view or show in the viewport, and the camera icon, which is going to toggle whether something shows up in the actual render. Now these 2 are not the same thing, and mixing them up is a common mistake that folks might make. Something can be visible while you're working on it, but invisible in the render, or the other way around, so keep an eye on both to make sure that they are set to the setting that you would like. The third view that we have is the Properties panel. This is in the bottom right. This is going to change based on what you've got selected, so for now there's a couple tabs to highlight. We're in the render options now, but we can change the output, for example, the size of the render that we're creating. And some others we're going to go into detail with later might be the data tab or the material tab. We'll get into more detail on how to use those later. Finally, a couple of navigation basics for the viewport itself. There is the option to orbit, pan, and zoom around the scene. This is how we're going to look around the model and the scene that we're building. So we can do all of this in the viewport in the top right. This is the UI method of doing things. We can see this axis of X, Y, and Z here, and if we click and drag in that circle, we're going to go ahead and orbit the camera around. And by camera, I mean the 3D viewport camera, not the actual camera in the scene. We'll get into how to use that camera later on, but first, just to show you where it is on the left of the scene here. So we can click and drag here, or if you are like me and like to use the different shortcuts available in Blender, clicking and holding in middle mouse button will let us orbit around the scene. Next, to pan in the scene, we have this hand icon that we can click and drag on. We can also hold Shift and use the middle mouse button to achieve the same result. And zooming, we can scroll, or we can use the zoom icon in the top right. That's really all you need to move around. I will mention, if you like to play video games and you want to be able to move around the scene, maybe like you were playing a video game in no-clip mode, you may also like the option under the View menu, Navigation, and either Fly or Walk navigation. You can then move your mouse around as if you were a first-person viewer and use the W, A, S, and D keys to move around, Shift to speed up like you're using the Run modifier. And when you're ready to exit this, you can left-click and exit the Fly mode. If you prefer keyboard shortcuts, this is Shift, backtick, and that'll move you into the Fly or Walk mode. So that's all we really need to be able to move around comfortably for now. Let's go ahead and move on to the next section on posing. So we're going to talk a little bit about the modes that we have available to us in Blender here. We start off in Blender in object mode, and we can see that in the top left of the window. This drop down here says object mode. This is for selecting and moving whole objects around. It's sort of the all-purpose mode. You'll notice that the available modes change depending on what is selected. So for example, if we click on the body mesh here, we will see that we have an object mode, an edit mode, a sculpt, vertex paint, weight paint, and texture paint mode. But we don't see an option to select a pose. That only shows up when we select an armature. Your armature is the skeleton of the model, the set of bones that lets you actually pose the character, kind of like how we have bones and that's how we move around partly. I'm not an expert in biology, but you get the point. So to pose Raven, we're going to go ahead and select the armature. We can select any of these kind of indicators around her. The whole armature will turn orange, and that is saying that we have selected the armature in object mode. Now we can switch in our drop down in the top left from object mode into pose mode, now that that's available, and we are able to individually select bones within the rig. Clicking on an individual bone and then using the different transform tools will allow us to change how Raven is standing. So for example, we can use the on-screen handles here. We have these blue, green, and red arrows to change the position of a selected bone. I'm gonna undo that change. Maybe we want to select the wrist here, and we want to move the hand down or up or left and right. We can also select a rotation tool if we want to change the rotation of a given bone or joint. And less commonly used, but still helpful to know, is the scale option. It looks a little goofy when you're using that on bones to scale things. You can kind of make some exaggerated renders perhaps if you really want, using the scale option. But those are your options to move bones around. You can also use the keyboard shortcuts to adjust things in the pose. So to go through those three that we just did, we can move things around by pressing G, that's our position. We can use R for rotation, and then S for scale. You can do this on pretty much any bone you select here. We can move things around, rotate, scale, again, kind of changes a little bit with the mode that we're in. But you'll notice as I've been moving things around and locking things into place that we have something happen where maybe the hair freezes a little bit. This is something that could trip people up. It's kind of a physics bones idea. Kayla's models have physics-enabled bones, things like hair, the tail, parts of clothing. They will react to motion. Now, when you move the pose around, let's say we kind of move her pretty quick here, we can see the hair is pulling down. Let's go ahead and get that to settle into the position it would actually settle at by pressing space. Notice the tail slides back into place, the hair settles, the ears settle, everything is in the position we expect. We can then press spacebar to pause the animation again. What's happening here, physics are simulating when the animation is playing, and so as that time goes by, the bones will snap into their proper position if they're supposed to move compared to other objects in the scene. So if something looks windswept, or you've completed a pose and things don't quite look right, almost always remember to press space to play the animation and get things into the right spot. We can kind of see that in action too if we want to reset the bones back to their rest position. We're in a pose right now, but let's go ahead and press A to select all bones, or select all. And we want to get things into the rest position. We can go to the pose menu, clear transform, and then select all, or use these keyboard shortcuts of Alt-G, Alt-R, and Alt-S to reset the location, rotation, and scale of every one of the bones. Now you can see she looks a little bit windswept. Her shirt is kind of offset a bit. Let's go ahead and press spacebar and let all of the bones settle into place. And then spacebar again to pause. Now this idea works on a single bone, a selected group, or the whole armature if you're going to reset the position of something. Let's say we've got her mouth wide open and we want to get that back into its rest position. We only have the bottom jaw bone selected here. we can press our Alt G, R, and S, and we are back into the rest position with Raven's jaw. Now, moving on to our next section, we can talk a little bit about clothing and accessories. Clothing items live in the outliner, usually under a clothing or accessories collection. So let's say, for example, we want to put on Raven's beanie. So we can open up the clothes collection on the right, and we can see here there's an object called beanie that is currently toggled off. So let's go ahead and turn that on, and you'll notice things are looking a little bit off here. We can see her hair and ear are clipping through the hat a little bit. Let's go ahead and fix this by exiting our pose mode by selecting the drop down and going back to object mode. You can also, when you are selected on an armature, press Control Tab to do that switch. And let's click on Raven's body mesh. And this is where we're going to start talking about shape keys. Under the data panel, while selected on the body mesh, we will see the different shape keys that are available to us that are basically preset toggles for different states of the model. So let's go ahead and find the beanie shape key in the list here. If we go ahead and select it, and you'll see it's unchecked. When we check that box, we will go ahead and move the hair and the ear out of the way. We can see that it's kind of changed the shape of the mesh to hide those under the hat. This same idea might happen if, say, for example, we wanted to toggle Raven's bra on. Let's go ahead and turn that on, and we need to make sure that the body and the shirt are reacting appropriately. So let's select the body mesh again. Let's go ahead and turn off some of the other options here. We can turn off the pasties, turn on the bra, and we can see that her chest kind of moves into place here. And we also need to update the shirt mesh here. We can see that the shirt itself has a shape key called no bra. Let's uncheck that, and the shirt's going to conform the way that it would if she's wearing her bra. Now, a quick note, some shape keys are highlighted and locked because they're automated by the rig. There's these purple ones here. You can just go ahead and leave those ones alone. So, in short, if an outfit looks wrong, just make sure to check two things: the body's shape keys and the clothing item's own shape keys. Now let's talk about rendering. So first, let's talk about kind of getting an idea of what our render is going to look like while we're here in the viewport. In the top right, we have these different view modes that change what the viewport looks like. Right now, we are on one called Solid. If we go to the left of that, we have an option called Wireframe. Now, this is going to show us, it's kind of hard to see here, but effectively the mesh in wireframe mode of what this character looks like. If we go back to Solid, it's a basic color preview of what the model looks like. And moving to the right of that, we have one called Material Preview. This is where we start to see what the actual materials look like on the model, with some hints of what the lighting might be. And then finally, we have Rendered View. And this is where any kind of lighting comes into play, and things look a little bit more like they will in the final render. So there's some toggles on the right here that are going to be things that you maybe won't see when you're in solid mode. So for example, if we take a look at the sweat toggle here, we go ahead and move into pose mode, press G to move the slider for sweat to the right. We can't see that very well or really at all on the model. But as we move from solid mode into material preview, we can start to see that pop up. And especially so when we move into the rendered view, we can see sort of that glisten on her. So important to call that out. Similarly, I'll go ahead and turn on the blush option. In the solid mode, this is going to be a kind of just a line that shows up across her face. But as we switch into material preview or rendered, it's a lot more subtle. So let's go ahead and reset everything back to our rest position. And let's talk about some other items that are helpful for renders. So I'm going to leave this in the rendered view so we can see all of the lighting in real time. And let's talk about lights. There's a couple of them in the scene. If we expand, I'm going to close out the clothing here and expand out the environment. There are a couple of lights here. There's an area light here, an area light here, We have a backdrop, which is not a light, but again, that's just part of the collection here. We have a light directly in front of her, and it's actually in the accessories. I'm going to go ahead and move that into environment. We have a point light in the background that's giving some extra kind of character to the backdrop here. On the right, as I've selected a light, we now have the data tab being light properties. We can change, for example, the color of the light. Maybe we want to make it a little bit more of a purple color. We can select that, a purplish pink. We can change the color. We can select how bright it is by bringing the power slider down or bringing it back up. Exposure is similarly going to really dramatically affect how bright a light is in the scene. Radius is going to change how big of a physical source that light is. So maybe a really powerful small light is really going to show up in one spot, versus if it was a bigger light and it might not necessarily affect the scene in the same way. We can do these same sorts of things with the area lights. These are kind of like if you imagine there was a light panel here producing this light. And as we move this through the scene, you can see the light affects Raven's body in different ways. As it gets closer, it's a brighter source affecting that very close to the model. Further away, it's more evenly affecting her and not as intensely. Same thing with the other area light. If we go ahead and select that, we can move that around and see how, just very even subtly on her nose there, that the light bounces off the corner there. If we want to see what this looks like in our camera view, we can press 0 on the numpad and press home on the keyboard to make it fill the screen. And this is a great way to get a sense of what things are starting to look like as you're going throughout the scene. Now, let's say we want to add another light. We can press the add button in the top left, and let's make sure we've clicked on the environment collection on the right, so it'll go into the right spot in our outliner view. And click add, or we can use the keyboard shortcut Shift A and select light. And let's add a new area light. Now it added that into the scene right here. We can make it a bigger light by scaling this box up and down. We can move the light around in the scene by using the transform tools here, or by using our keyboard shortcuts like G or R to rotate the light. Area lights have this nice kind of yellow point that we can click and drag that will let us choose what that light is pointed at. So maybe let's say we wanted to kind of give a spooky flashlight vibe, a flashlight telling campfire stories we have under Raven's face. So let's grab our top view here, move our light kind of to the spot underneath her face. And we need to reorient that light to be pointed up. We can kind of orbit around and see, yep, it's pointed up at her face. Maybe we want it to look a little bit more like a flashlight. We can go ahead and pick a spotlight. And we can increase the power. And we can see if we take a look around, maybe we move the light down a little bit and back a little bit, we can start to get that dramatic holding a flashlight under your face look. And if we take a look from the camera's point of view, there's not a flashlight prop in the scene yet, but this starts to show, if we move the light around, what it might look like if she was holding one around here pointed up at her face. We can use that arrow to point things around. The spotlight's going to give us that harsh flashlight type look. Area light might be a little bit different. Sun is not really going to do that for us here. That's for world lighting. And then point is going to kind of illuminate in all directions, but spot and area are our directional lights. You can play around with the settings to get the light to be the kind of shape and character that you want. Maybe it has a slight yellow tint for an older flashlight or something like that. Lots of options there. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove this. We can select the light and choose Object, Delete, or you can see the keyboard shortcut is X, and that will delete the selected object. Now, we've got our camera preview here. It's helpful to be able to split your viewport into two so that you can view what the camera sees while you're working on the scene and you might be moving around. So either in the top left or top right, go ahead and move your cursor up there and you'll see it turns into this sort of plus looking symbol. click and drag that, and you'll see that there is a vertical bar. If you were doing horizontal for any reason, you can see that it turns into a horizontal bar. And moving that left and right, it snaps kind of in the center. Let's go ahead and use that for now. We now have two views. They are both the 3D viewport. We have one that is our old view that is still in the rendered shading view. And then we have a new one that switched back to solid. We don't need both of these to be in rendered, and I'm actually going to put the rendered view on the right. No real reason, just personal preference. And I'm going to shrink that view and press home so that it fills the view nice. And let's hide some of these different on-screen items to make our camera preview just a bit more only a camera preview. We can go ahead and turn off the show gizmo option. That turns off our tools in the top right. We can click the show overlays button to turn off the different bones. And we can go ahead and press T to hide the toolbar. And as I'm doing this, I've realized I've left an object on that is no longer needed. Let's go ahead and turn off the pasties, which is going to be in our clothing section here. Turn off the viewport and the camera view of those. Perfect. So now that we've got our camera view on the right with everything hidden, so we can see just what the camera sees in the material preview mode of rendered, and I was able to move that to the right by scrolling in this top bar. And then we have a viewport that we can move around, navigate our scene, work on things like posing as we want to, while seeing what it looks like at the camera, while still having freedom to move around here. So let's give a quick test preview. Let's go ahead and press F12, see where we're at. Now after a second, I've let this render and I notice, Raven's beanie is not visible. How can we go ahead and fix that? Let's close our render, take a look at our beanie in the view on the right here, the outliner view, and we can see that her beanie has viewport visibility on, but it has render visibility off. This is that reminder I brought up in the beginning. You want to make sure that if something is supposed to be visible, you have both of these turned on if you intend for it to be in the end result. So let's press F12 again to check out that render. And perfect. Now I'm going to go ahead and do a quick pose, and we'll talk about what to do when we're happy with our render and save it. Okay, so we need to adjust our camera a little bit so that we have that positioned correctly. We could either select our camera in the viewport and move it around. That's one option that we have. Or we could use our fly mode if we would like, something like shift backtick, and move that around as if we were playing a video game. Really personal preference to see if you're doing this the way that feels comfortable to you. But once we've locked that in, maybe we want to move some of the lighting around, since we've moved where Raven is in the scene a little bit. Bring our lighting back in so that we have plenty of good lighting to make this scene look interesting. Maybe we want to move the light on the backdrop down a little bit. There we go. So now let's preview our render one more time by pressing F12. It's going to go ahead and use the full rendering capabilities, not just a preview. And let's say we're happy with this. Let's go ahead and press Image, Save As. And this is going to open up a view where we can select where to save the finished image. So let's give this a file name here. And by default, you can see we've got PNG selected as the type. If you have a preference for another type, you can select that. And select Save As. Now if we open up our folder, we can see we have a file called test render. And there we go, there's our image. Now, if for any reason you want a transparent background, I will note that you can turn off the visibility of the backdrop. So let's go ahead and close that for a second. Let's go ahead and click on our backdrop, and we can turn off the, I'll turn off the viewport as well, but I'll turn off the viewport and the render view of the backdrop. If we were to press F12 again, After a second here, you'll notice that actually that backdrop is gone, and we have the kind of transparency indicator, in case you wanted to make a transparent image. Effectively, though, that is that covers the basics. You can do a lot of really cool stuff with Kayla's models. Now, something an eagle-eyed viewer may have noticed, and maybe you've already been typing up a comment to let me know this, is Astra, in the viewport, Raven doesn't have glasses, but in your render, Raven does have glasses, and let's go ahead and double check that. There they are. You know what? I did the same thing that I warned against. Let's go ahead and find where her glasses are in the hierarchy. We can see here there is this collection here. It has the render enabled for these objects, even though they're turned off in the viewport. Let's go ahead and turn those off, re-render, and there we go. We can go ahead and save. We can save over our old file, or if we want, we can save it with a new file name. But just note that if you're saving over the old file, you'll get a nice red warning button that says we're going to overwrite an existing file. And now that we're done, we can check back in our folder, open the image. There we go. So bonus points to you if you happen to see that while watching this video and thought, hang on, there's something there that's not in the viewport. So some frequently asked questions, some things to keep in mind. If you can't select anything, if it feels like you're trying to select something and it's just not working the way that you expect. So let's say we're down here, we're working on our scene, and we want to take Raven's beanie off. We're trying to select it, and no matter what we do, we seem to not be able to actually click on the beanie. That may be an indication that we are in the wrong mode in Blender. So in this case, we are in pose mode still. We can check that by checking in the top left. Let's switch back to object mode, and look at that. We can now select the beanie, and now we can go ahead and turn that off if we want. We could do that in the outliner as well, but if, for example, you're trying to select an object in the viewport, that would be a reason why, is you might be in the wrong mode. One that we've already covered, again, is if something shows up in the viewport but not in the render or vice versa, just be sure to check the eyeball and camera icons in the outliner for that item. Both need to be on for it to appear in both places, or both need to be off if you'd like it off in both places. Similarly, if you are turning something off, maybe it's a clothing or accessory, and you needed to change a shape key to be able to get things to look right on the body mesh, let's go ahead and find where the beanie is, and now that we've taken that off, uncheck the beanie toggle. And again, if things are looking wrong after posing, let's say we've reset our pose and we see Raven's tail is currently kind of going through her thigh a little bit because we've moved her pose. Remember to press spacebar to apply the physics and let things kind of slide back into place. Alrighty, so a couple of things to note before we wrap up. If you want to build out fuller scenes, get things like props, backdrops, extra assets in, check out the Blender Kit add-on. It's a drag and drop asset library right inside Blender, and there's a decent amount of free content to be able to build out scenes. You can go to blendkit.com, and I realized I called it Blender Kit. They are changing their name to Blend Kit. Go ahead and click Download Blend Kit and download the zip file here. They show you how to install it by going to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and then installing from a zip by selecting the Install button. So I already have it installed, but I had it disabled for this video. If we go to our add-ons and turn on Blender Kit, we have this nice drop down at the top, and it would be really helpful if we wanted to add something like a mailbox to the scene. We can select to show free first in the filter, and maybe we want to click and get this asset in the scene. It starts out pretty small, so we can actually select it in our view, and you'll notice I've accidentally placed it in the clothes collection. Let's move that out to our root scene and then into the environment. Select our mailbox option, scale that up. Maybe we want to move that into the background a little bit here. Maybe we want to search for See if there is like an alleyway or something like that. Looks like there's a road that we can get here. Some background textures, things like that. Let's pull one of those in. Scale it up. Move it into the background some more. Get our road into the scene. Scale that up. Move it back. We start to come together with a more interesting looking scene, perhaps. We can adjust our camera until things are looking the way that we want. So you can do some pretty interesting stuff with finding different assets available with BlenderKit. Another important resource to keep in mind, since we are using Kayla's model here, is to go to kaylafox.au, scroll down until you see Blender models, and you can check out Kayla's other Blender models available to work with. Awesome cast of characters here, whether it is a character of Kayla's design or an existing character Kayla's made an awesome model for. Also, if you are a fursuit maker, there's an awesome one here called Fursuit Blender Toolkit. Very cool kind of parametric way to generate the face shape to 3D print the components for a fursuit head. It's really cool. Very cool stuff to check out there. kaylafox.au, remember to check that out. As well as there are a variety of 3D assets here as well. You can go ahead and, get a cool new pair of Converse to put into your renders. Those are available for free on the store here. If you make something you're proud of, please share it. Just remember to credit Kayla as the model creator. I'm sure he wants to see all the cool things that you make. I'd love to see the cool things you make. We can make what you'd like and tag Kayla or put some kind of note that Kayla made the model. If you ever need a refresher while you're working on a file yourself, maybe you're making something you want to share, but you need to remember how something works in this model or some of the details that we've covered in this video, you can turn on the help desk text collection in the outliner view. And what you'll start to see, if I actually toggle the visibility on here, is we can see some text that's going to give us reminders for how to use some of the concepts we talked in here. A reminder for where to get more clothing items, the BlenderKit add-on, some reminders on the different shape keys that you may need to use, just some good helpful reminders. A reminder that F12 will let you render the scene out. So good place to check for a refresher. You can check out this video if you want. Definitely thank you for watching. This is a really cool model and cool collection of models from Kayla. So again, check out all his awesome work there. Share what you make. Yeah, curious to see what you do. You can find me at astrabun.com. I am on Blue Sky as well, Fur Affinity as well. If you'd like to find me anywhere else on the web, astrabun.com is going to be your place to go. And of course, Kayla, who without his work, this video would not be possible. kaylafox.au will have all of Kayla's links. He's on Fur Affinity, he's on Twitter, plenty of places to go check him out. So again, thank you so much for watching, and make something cool. This is awesome.